But the way he fell, he had hit his head, and they're like, yeah, he's state high patrol's like, hey, this is whatever, officer, blah, 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 you're on the record. Inmate, they said the guy's name, and I'm like, and they're like, he had to be transported to outside medical facility, and he's currently in a coma. And I'm like, oh. Like, I want to talk to my lawyer. And they're like, okay. I don't have a lawyer, but, you always say that once you know you're and
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes, and they go real fast. They're mental defectives.
Welcome to the Mental Defectives podcast, a show where we interview interesting individuals with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Milligram. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you know me. Joined, as always, by the Henry Kissinger of Harleys, the gearhead with the heart of gold. It's Mr. Jerry with a G.
Glad to be here.
And today...
tap the brakes. Hold on.
Tapping.
Just like you should tap that like and subscribe button if you dig what we do.
Like and subscribe. Because today we have a very, very special guest. He can bench 225 times without breaking a sweat. A father always focused on his health. Please welcome David. David, how's it going?
It's going all right, man. First, I'm honored, and it was a privilege that you reached out to me to be on here, so I'm just blessed you guys thought of me when you guys were, looking for guests, so.
Hell yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on, dude.
Glad.
David, where are you from?
I'm from here in Columbus, right up on the north side, but...
The Linden area?
Yes. Originally from there, but I tell people every time I sit down and explain any of my past or my history, I'm for a large portion of my life, I was also from wherever I could live for free. So that took me various places throughout Ohio. So that's pretty much the spiel on that. So I'm originally from Columbus, but I mean, I've lived wherever I could for free for a little bit. So
fair enough.
And we'll get into that a little bit later.
Oh yeah, definitely need to get into that. When was your first drink?
My first drink, I remember when I was actually 12 years old, and it's an interesting story, and I'll get into that if you want. So I was my 12th birthday. My mom gave me I think I got $40 or something in a card, and my stepbrother at the time, he was like, hey, we should go get some weed. And I was like, and they talked me into it. There's a bunch of people around. We ended up walking across town, probably 2 miles, go get this weed. And then he had this little treehouse thing, and I remember we went up there, and there was some alcohol involved too. And next thing you know, we rolled this shitty ass blunt. You could flip it upside down, all the weed would fall out, and we had a scramble. It kind of all audible, so we start smoking out of this contraption, like a fucking trumpet this dude made. And I remember just being in this little treehouse fort little deal, and everybody was high, and they were laughing. Somehow there was 8 kids with us. And surprisingly, I absolutely hated the feeling. Got super paranoid. I remember going to get the weed. I was thinking God, this fucking NCIS Miami's gonna kick in the door and run forensic tests on us.
Or a bunch of 12-year-olds walking 2 miles to buy weed in a treehouse.
Right.
It's so funny. How it starts versus how it ends.
So I hated the feeling though of the actual high and the intoxication at the beginning on the onset of use, but I did end up falling in love with the feeling I got from going to get the weed, that rush, that excitement. And then the camaraderie of the people around me. All of a sudden, I had friends, and they were laughing, and they wanted to be around, and that was a good feeling. Later on, I obviously fell in love with the actual high part of it, but that was my first onset to addiction and substance use in general. So yeah, that was pretty much how that went.
Okay. So this is 12 or 14?
12, just 12 years old. Yep.
And then
Water sponsored by Mental Defectives podcast. Absolutely.
Do we start smoking weed every day, or you slowly get into it?
So I slow rolled at first, then it was a weekend kind of thing, and then eventually I ended up liking it. And then so then that became the thing. Me and my friends, that's what we did. We were the bad kids, and people's parents probably told us to stay the fuck away from us. But if you wanted to skip school and have a good time, we were the guys, right? And then that obviously led into some other areas in my life where I just could not control the use, even as like minute as a drug people say like marijuana and alcohol are. From very early on, I remember that, like controlling my obsession, my decision making. I got to a point where I was real young and I was like committing real crimes to smoke weed and drink alcohol, which sounds crazy, but that's where it took me rather quickly, much quicker than I've later learned is actually normal for people. So yeah, that was like how that went, and then that became like an everyday weekend kind of thing. Weekend, then all right, yeah, we're gonna do this every day, and then then I started having some consequences with the law, because I started getting in trouble at school. My goal was to get suspended at school. I knew if I got suspended at school, I wouldn't have to go to school, and all that kind of stuff. And I had a pretty troubled childhood prior to that, where my father and my mother, they both struggled with substance abuse addiction, on and off. So I definitely had some, later on in life, I learned I had some insecurities that I was trying to fill with that feeling I described at the beginning of like having people around me and, having friends. And it was more or less what I had in my pocket dictated my mood. So if I had money or I had drugs of some sort, I had friends and I had people around. People wanted to be around me. People liked me, but then what I learned is like, if your self-esteem's like dictated off what's in your bank account or your pocket, it's like you're going down a bad road. So.
And what kind of licks were you hitting in?
So we were hitting
like high
some
school,
licks.
like 15, 16, 17? Like...
So this was prior to that. I mean, we were, at first it started like, hey, we're going to run out of Kroger's with like Parrot Bay alcohol and shit.
Smash and grab at the Kroger.
Yeah,
Hell
just
yeah.
grab it and just run it out. And then, then it was like, hey, let's go break into some cars in the neighborhood. So then we did that, and then it started to get very serious, like burglaries, and then like later what I learned are like robberies and stuff like that. And when I say robberies, I don't mean like I'm just out pulling a pistol on random people, but like, hey, let me get that, or somebody might just take something and be like, oh, you're not getting this back, or whatever. But so I started having consequences though rather early while at school, and then that led to being placed on juvenile probation. Obviously I wasn't going to change what I was doing, my lifestyle habits and all that. So I started getting incarcerated at a very, very young age. So 13 years old, I got incarcerated. They let me out. I remember the probation officer told me, like, if you do this again, I'm going to lock you up for a really, really long time.
How long was that first bid?
9 months. I did 9 months from when I was 13 to 14.
Damn.
I got out. When I was out for 3 months. The disease progressed. The disease of addiction progressed, and it hadn't heightened to the level where I was doing other drugs, but I just didn't care. Like the give a fuck was gone. 3 months out of that correctional facility, I was right back in for another 6 months correctional facility I was at. So by the time I was 15, I'd already done damn near a year and a half, and that severely impacted the way I viewed life. So when I got out of that, I was still on probation. They put me on an ankle monitor. I would cut the ankle monitor off. I would just do crazy shit like that.
Right.
And then I just didn't care, man. And I would just continuously get locked up. And that pattern actually followed me for a very, very long time. And like I said, I'll get into some more deeper stuff with that. As the disease progressed, the consequences progressed, and the things I was doing to fix my habit for that day, right, is also they progressed as well.
What was that first bid like going in at 13 as like a juvenile?
So, on the outside, look, hey, I'm this fucking skinny white kid from fucking, Columbus or whatever. So I'm thinking like, oh yeah, like motherfucker try me. And then, I get there and
I'm 85 pounds. You better not
yeah,
push me.
I get there and it was just like, I remember being so scared on the inside, but I just didn't know if that was normal to talk about that kind of stuff. And in that setting and in that environment, I guess it's not. So you kind of got to act as if. And the acting as if part really kind of, I guess, somewhat protected me. I'm not saying I won every fight I got in. Hell, I probably lost majority of them, but I mean, it was getting tried a lot. Like, obviously it's kind of like you got to prove you're worthy to be here kind of thing. So yeah, I got my ass busted a few times in there. But, I also learned how to navigate without having to do that a lot. Like, it's things to avoid to do, things to do. I always tell people, man, when I'm clean, I'm a very good person. When I'm sober, I'm a good person. Whatever word you want to use. I know there's people out there that don't say that word, but whatever, you get the picture. When I'm high, I'm a great person, but it's when I'm trying to get high, I'm a very dangerous person. And obviously, when you're removed from drugs and alcohol and you're in a correctional facility, you're healthy, you're eating, your mind's clear of any outside substances, so you're back to normal premise. And normally, I know I'm not a piece of shit, but the things I'll do to get high, I would equivalent that to like characteristics of somebody that I would say is a piece of shit. And that's really when I'm in there, I've learned like, okay, I'm a decent person here. Why am I giving these institutions the best version of myself? And then I get out and I give like people that care about me or my loved ones like the shittiest versions of myself. And that's really like,
What a perspective.
yeah, absolutely,
You
man.
had that at 13, or that's something?
No, that was a reflective.
Okay,
kind of
Yeah, but
damn,
damn, that's a solid perspective.
Back
though.
then, I
Holy
was
shit.
like, talking to this brick wall right here.
yeah.
But yeah, man. So then, as the teenage years progressed, I started like, okay, everybody's selling drugs. So like, I did the whole selling drugs thing, and I was decent at it for a real brief period. It's like an Eddie Lacy highlight film. Like the dude was a dog at Alabama, but you got to dig through hours of footage to find his highlights in the NFL, right? And that's kind of like how my drug dealing days were. It's like you got to dig through hours of footage to put together a little
3-month run of
Yeah,
like
a little-
in
yeah.
the black every day.
It'd be like a YouTube short where it's like 12 seconds of like me doing good, but you got to dig through like a fucking 3-hour movie to get that. So, but so people around me in that environment, they're selling drugs to fit their means or whatever, and that's cool, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure you guys probably thought that was cool at one point too, right? Like, people sell drugs, they got money, they're always getting
Probably
high.
driving around bumping like Tony Ayo mixtapes.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
slinging,
yeah.
Thinking I'm really doing something.
Yeah, like I'm really doing it, right?
Yeah. And very relatable on like the 3-hour movie to get a 12-second highlight reel.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Like,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So then that goes on, and then the pattern of like going to jail and getting out, going to jail, getting out. And I was able to navigate my way with just like smoking weed and drinking for a real long time until I couldn't, right? So then I remember like I had went to a doctor's dentist appointment, and I was like 17, and they prescribed me like, I don't know, they were like Vicodin 10s or something. And I had a friend at the time, my friend Florida John was his nickname, give him a shout out or whatnot. He was like, yo, we should bust one of them down. And I'm like, hell no, bro, that's what the fucking drug addicts do. And he's like, fuck it, bro, come on. And I'm like, all right, fuck it. I crushed it down. Then I snorted. I'm like, just don't tell nobody I did this. He's like, I ain't gonna say nothing. And I fucking got lit. And I mean, it was like snorting the chalk. I mean, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, it's
right.
It was a
a
grind.
lot of,
Yeah.
It was a grind to get it down. So I
Yeah.
earned my badge right away from there. And then I remember though, I loved that fucking feeling, dude. From the initial, like, just the way it made me feel. I was energetic. I was outgoing, until I sat down. And then I sat down, and then my chin would be on my chest, and then I'd get up and I'd start cleaning shit. And then I remember like deep cleaning this whole fucking basement I was living in at the time. It was like my room or whatever. And I'm like, man, I really like that. And then obviously I was still on probation. I ended up going to jail for, I can't even remember what. This was probably like the fucking 10th time I went to jail as a juvenile. And I'm leaving a huge story out of this. I'm sorry. Hopefully when we go back and edit, we could piece it to right back to where I was when I was like 13. But I have to tell this to tell the rest of the story.
Yeah.
I got into a fist fight with the stepbrother that was mentioned earlier in the in my spiel here. And I remember he kind of got the best of me. He had this turtle tank in the room. We were in a small room. We shared the room. And he was like, it stunk. I don't know if you guys know anything about turtles, but they're not the most hygienic creatures on the planet, especially if you don't clean the tank for fucking 3 months. And I'm like, yo, you got to clean that fucking turtle tank. And he's like, said, fuck you, or whatever he said. And then we ended up getting in a fist fight. One of my sisters came and broke it up. And I left, and it was like something out of a movie now that I talk about it, like you would see. And I was like, hey, fuck you, bitch, blah, 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 whatever I'd said. And he ended up getting murdered later that night. And
Oh, shit.
like, them were the last words I got to say to the dude. And I just remember thinking it was over a quarter ounce of weed. He had owed somebody some money for it or something like that. I don't know the whole details of the situation because I wasn't there, but the guy ended up killing him. And it was a pretty gruesome story because it was like a 14-year-old kid got his head blown off with a shotgun stuffed in the attic.
Jesus.
The guy like kind of tried to flee state. He ended up getting caught because his dad or grandpa or whoever's house it was where my stepbrother was in the attic, came home and obviously seen the massacre that had happened and called the police. But yeah, and just to be honest, I don't know if this affected my view on like empathy or feelings that I have, but I don't remember getting sad. I don't remember like getting like, I just remember feeling numb. And like that numbness was just like there for years and years and years. But I still to this day think about like that incident of me and him getting in there and getting in that fight and just how fragile life can be. And like, you just don't really know like the outcome of what's going to happen. Like, you know, that's not on anybody's bingo card.
Right.
Something that tragic to happen as like to some youths that are, you know, they just had a simple fight that you would have with your friend or your brother or your family or loved ones or whatever. But,
And how old was he when that happened?
he was 14, I was 13.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
that
God
skyrocketed the use of, you know, what we like to call like socially acceptable drugs for me. I don't know if it's socially acceptable for a 13-year-old, but, and then also looking back on it, like who in the fuck was buying alcohol for me? Like, you know, selling me weed and alcohol. Like, what? This is crazy. But people were doing it. But yeah, so that kind of propelled that into like the next level, and then also sprinkled in with the like not giving a fuck already. And then I'm a big believer, and I don't believe like. I'm not going to say I don't believe because I would get crucified for that, but I believe that substance abuse is more of a disorder. And what I mean by that is like alcoholism or substance abuse, I believe it's a hereditary trait, much like, you know, schizophrenia can be passed down from family members. I believe that's exactly how alcoholism is for somebody, and I believe I already had those traits. And then once that switch was flipped, it was like, okay, I can't stop, right?
Yeah. It's like a Winter Soldier style, like you just hear like you're, because I'm of the same belief, because like if I look at my family, we've had one of my family members on the show already. So like if I look through my family tree, like I buy into that, but it's like that like Winter Soldier thing of like I'm born with these like genetic predispositions, and then one little thing happens, and it's usually an innocent smoking weed in a treehouse, trying a fucking wine cooler, and then it just like sparks that ignition.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's the same thing like that. Looking back on what I know now, looking back then, it was like once that switch got flipped, it was like, and then you sprinkle that in there, and then you throw some traumatic experiences in there, and it's just like it's a perfect recipe for disaster in my eyes.
The Mental Defectives podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More Is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
So I remember I was catching all these charges. I'm 17.
And this is all just like possessions,
like intent to like distribute, stuff like that. I remember one year I was 17. I got pulled over. I wasn't driving. I was in the back seat. And there was like a quarter pound of weed in the car, and they got that. And I wasn't going to let the other people go down for it. So like that was mine. But little did they know, the 2 people in the front had a bunch of Oxycontins on them, but they let those girls just walk away, but they fucking took me to jail. Right. But it's like, it is what it is. Yeah, so then I went to the police station, and the police didn't arrest me at the time. So I was like, fuck it, I'm getting out of jail. Like, you know, and then I'm like, walking out there, like, I get out of jail, nothing happens. Then next thing you know, people are calling me like, hey, they're like kicking in doors, like looking for you, dude. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And they're like, yeah, they're like banging on people's houses, sheriff's department. Like, they ended up coming to this house I was at, and then they're like, yeah, you got a DUI. We found that I took one of my family members' vans. They had this van, and they were sleeping, and I was so like blacked out drunk. I drove it from Sawmill Road, right over back by the Taco Bell and stuff down there at Sawmill 270. I ended up making it from there all the way to like North Broadway. Went down there to see like my boy Will, Ill Will.
Oh, shout out to Will.
Yeah, shout out to Will, man. And I don't even remember, but I like hit somebody's fucking car, so they ended up tracing it back, and then like it was me obviously, and then the all these little things that like the weed that they let me out of jail for, and they're like, okay, we are gonna incarcerate you and let you off probation from it was like 7 months. So like I turned 18 in the county jail. I get out of the county jail after I did that whole little time or whatever, that 7 months, and then I'm an adult now. I remember turning 18 in the county jail, and it was like a humbling experience. Getting out, I got incarcerated in shorts and a short sleeve shirt. I get out of jail, and then I ended up getting like $250, and then like I'm like selling weed again, and then somebody pulled me to the side, and then they're like, hey, you should like get on with these 30s. And I'm like, what are you talking about, 30s? Like, I'm not, you make like $1 or $2 off a pill. And he's like, nah, bro, look, you get them off me, I go to Florida, I'll sell them to you for a really good deal. And then I'm like, man, okay, I've got 20 of them. They were gone in like 2 fucking hours. And this is when the 30s were like exploding or whatever. And next thing you know, here in like 3 months, like I'm getting like 200 of them at a time, 100 of them at a time. And I know that don't really sound like a lot, but to me, I was like, fucking, like, I'm doing my thing, right? I'm in a room off of Huey Road in North Columbus. There's probably like fucking 10 people in this 8 by 12 foot room. There's just cigarette smoke, blunt smoke, fucking, we're drinking. And these girls are like, yeah, let's snort a pill. I'm like, I'm not fucking snorting no pill. They're like, do it, dude, do it. And I'm drunk now. I'm like, fuck it. And I pulled the whole one out, and I remember crushing it up. They're like, no, don't do that much. And I'm like, fuck you. And I snort the whole 30.
Shit.
And then I fucking about puked, dude.
Yeah.
And I got up, and I walked down the hallway, and I ended up throwing up like 5 minutes later. And I just laid there on this couch, and I just remember thinking like, oh, I'm having a great fucking time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here. Like, you know, I've arrived.
For
and
sure.
then next day I woke up. Man, that was so much fun. Later that night, snorted one. Like 2-3 weeks, maybe a month. I'm like, fuck it now. Let's snort 2, right? And then that whole summer goes on, and then I wake up one day, and I had 2 left in my pocket. So I was selling like 100 or 2. This is a very key part. Now I woke up with 2 in my pocket. That was it. But I don't have a problem, right? I don't have an issue.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm coming up with crazy stories to people, and for some whatever fucking reason, they're like still like fronting me drugs at this time to sell for them, which is wild. It's like, you know, good drug dealers don't like start with 20 and then go to 50, and then that's what they do. I was going from like 100 to 50 to 20 to now I got 2 in my pocket.
Right.
But I remember I didn't do them, and then I just started like I got like it got cold, and then like I felt like goosebumps all over my body. And I just remember I ended up throwing up. This was like 6 hours later, so I thought for sure I had the flu.
Oh yeah.
And this is a day I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I go to Riverside Hospital. I'm sitting in Riverside Hospital, and they give me a blanket. I wrap up in the blanket, and I'm sitting there, and next thing you know, I'm seeing people that came in after me go be seen before me by the doctor. So now I got a problem, right? So I go up to the triage lady or whoever the nurse is, and I'm like, yo, these fucking people came in after me. Why are they being seen before me? And she's like, well, their sickness or whatever is probably more severe. We don't really make that determination. I sat in that waiting room for like 3 hours. Finally, I freaked out. I'm like, yo, this is fucking bullshit. Like, you guys need to see me. You're denying me. All of a sudden, I know my rights, right? Like, you're denying me my right to health care and all this kind of shit. And they ended up escorting me out with the security guards. And then I'm like, fuck you guys. I went back to that same house up there off Oakland Park, and I just like fucking crushed both pills down. I snorted them, and I instantly felt better. And it fucking hit me like a ton of bricks. Like
You had those in your pocket
the whole time. I thought I had the flu. I had them in my pocket the whole time.
You didn't know you was withdrawing.
I didn't know I was withdrawing. So I crushed them up. I snorted them. I felt better instantly, and it hit me.
That's
and I was
when
like,
you knew.
I'm a fucking drug addict.
Fuck.
And I'm full.
Yup.
Yeah, and I'm fucked
Yup.
because now I just did my last 2, so what am I going to do? And then, you know, like we do the whole robbing Peter to pay Paul thing till that's out the bag, and then that went on for a while, and then I remember people telling me.
And what are you, like 20 at this point?
I'm like 20 years old, man, and I remember people telling me like, "Hey, dude, like you got a problem," and I'm like, "Nah, man, like I don't got a problem, right?" Like, and they're like, "No, you got a problem. Like you should try to look into like going to rehab, and accessibility to treatment wasn't like it is today." Right. Where you just pick up your phone and then like you'll start getting people to call you. It's like it wasn't a thing. You called Maryhaven and they might let you in, or if you were lucky enough, like your parents had like private insurance or something, you could slide in on that. But the accessibility wasn't there, and so it really wasn't convenient for me. So I was like, I ain't gonna do that. I'll just fucking suffer and do drugs for the rest of my life. So I end up doing some petty shit, and I end up going to jail, and then I go to jail, and then all that kind of happens, and then every time I get out, it's like it's gonna be different. I'm just not gonna fuck with those no more, and no matter what I did, it always led me back to there, right? Yeah. Because I was never totally ready to just stop doing everything. I couldn't even fathom that. Like, right. So I go to jail, and they put me on a felony probation. I got pulled over, and I had a bunch of like Klonopins and some other prescription drugs, and then obviously some like, I think they're Oxycontin or Roxy's, whatever I had. And then now they're like, you got a felony out of this, and I'm just like, wow, this is fucking bullshit. Like, why me, right? Like, why the dude walking around with fucking pills that aren't his? Like, why is he going to jail? Like, it's not a fucking misdemeanor in any state, but here I am, right? And then they're like, hey, we're gonna let you out, but like if you fail a drug test or anything like that, like we're sending you to prison. And I'm like, okay.
And are they looking at like your juvenile record?
Oh yeah.
With each one of these instances, is that a lot of why like they're locking you up each time because they're like, this fucking list of priors is a goddamn mile long?
Yeah, like, 100%. I believe, looking back, because they always brought it up. But, they would give me chances, too, and I just pissed those away. They'd be like, okay, we're going to let you out. You need to go to this treatment program and, like, at least do outpatient. Or you need to be going to meetings this many times a week. And, I just would always disregard what they say. So then I go to prison, and then I remember I'm riding into prison, and it's setting on
what's the thing that lands you in prison?
So when I got pulled over with all the prescription pills or whatever, at this point I'm a total junkie, right? Like, but of course I'm not gonna let anybody know that in prison. Like, I was a fucking drug addict on the street, like so. So I go to prison, and then I remember they sentenced me, and I'm just like, I'm scared as fuck, right? Like, I'm like, what am I gonna do? I go right into Lancaster after we ride into CRC, obviously, and then I remember already saying, like, this is where all the young kids go. This is, like, fucking, they would call it gladiator school or whatever. So I hope I had a good poker face, but I ride in. My first day in there, I hope I'm not war storying here, but
please.
Go for it.
I get in a fight with this dude. I thought he stole something from me. Later on, I find it that he didn't steal from me. So I about caused this big fucking thing. And that was like my first night there. I'm like, because everybody's telling me if somebody takes something from you or tries you, you got to do it right then and there, right? And I'm like, yeah. And then that old story where they're like, find the biggest guy on the yard and you just fucking start. Don't ever do that. Nobody. I've actually seen nobody ever do that. Actually, right?
And meanwhile, you're like cold turkey withdrawing from opiates and benzos at this point.
No, I'd already got that out of my system. I sat in the county for like a month.
Okay.
All right.
But so I did go through all that though, and then I go to prison, and I remember walking to the yard in prison, and I knew some people from Columbus or whatever, and then I hear this, hey, and I turn around, I'm like looking like this, and they're like, come here. I'm like, oh fuck. So I walk up to him, and he's with a group of people, and it was my boy Matt Martin from same neighborhood I'm from.
Oh, nice.
And it was like a fucking saving grace.
Yeah.
And I was like,
right.
He's like, what the fuck are you doing here? I'm like, fuck you doing here? Same thing you're doing. Like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, like you I'm gonna get you moved over here. And after he got me moved over there, I'd always get in some bullshit, and I was getting high and stuff in there, and snorting Suboxones and doing all that kind of crazy shit. And
Is that easy to come by in there?
Super easy until it's not, and then it's fucking pure pandemonium. Yeah, once it's dry, it's fucking it's insane. But people are going crazy over it, and like we're all getting high, and not everybody, but I was, and then I had fun, and that's fucking sad to say, but it was like I had fun in there. My first number in there.
And what was how long was that bid?
So that was for 18 months, or it was supposed to be 18 months, but then I had something else come. I did like 33 months, so a little bit short of 3 years. The first charge I had was 18 months. They sent me on. Then I had some other stuff that came up and bit me in the ass, and it's like some B&E, and then so I ended up doing like altogether the whole stretch was like 33 months. So I get out of prison. This whole time I'm thinking I'm just going to cure my addiction myself, right? I'm not even convinced I'm really an addict.
Sure.
I know inside, but like I haven't accepted that fact, right? And I remember this though, dude. I remember this, and little do you know, I share this every time that somebody asks me to share at any type of public speaking engagement. But my first time ever being introduced to any form of recovery. I know I'm kind of all over the place, so excuse me. But I gotta say this because I forgot about it. You guys got me talking and shit. I'm walking up Oakland Park, and there's a Dairy Queen right there. And across from the Dairy Queen is a church. And all these people are sitting outside the church. And I'm walking to my cousin's house. My cousin lived like 2 roads up. And I remember I was walking through, and I asked somebody for a cigarette, and they just gave me one. And I sat there and I talked, and then they were like, they knew, because they were me. I didn't know that then.
Yeah.
They were me that just looked a little cleaner, right? And they're like,
Put
hey.
a couple 24 hours under their
Yeah,
belt.
right, right,
And then all of
yeah.
a sudden you can afford to bum somebody's
Yeah,
cigarette.
yeah, here, man. And I
Yeah.
remember going in that meeting. Somehow this older gentleman talked me into going into the meeting. He was a real slick talker, too. He talked me into going in. I go in there, and the first thing they asked was, does anybody need a ride home from this meeting? At this moment, I'm like calling my cousin's house, and nobody's answering. And my dad lived all the way up off of 161. And I raised my hand. I was like, yeah, me. And I'm high, so I got some confidence. I got some courage, right? And he's like, somebody will get with you after this. And, sure enough, that dude was like, I got you. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm over there eating cookies, fucking drinking coffee. I'm talking to people. And then I knew, though, if I made it down, I think it was Wednesday. I think that's what the day it was, what that meeting was. Then I found out they do multiple of these things a week. So I'm like, fuck, I could like go right here off Weber, get my dope, go make it to the meeting, and I'll have a fucking
And get a ride home.
I'll have a ride home. And that was my first introduction to any form of like anything to do with recovery. And then I remember I sat in these meetings, and I'd be fucking blitzed in these things, dude. And I'd start talking, like, yeah, my name's Dave, I'm an alcoholic. And they would let me talk, and they'd give me a ride home. I'm like, these fucking people are pretty nice, dude. So I little did I know, like,
Wait, what year was this?
fuck, this had to be about 2010. 2010.
Oh,
yeah, around there.
Yeah.
Okay.
2010.
Just before my time.
Yes,
Right.
that was
Otherwise,
my.
I'd have been
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah, that was my onset to then, and then
So this happened before you did the 33 months.
yes,
in
before.
prison. Oh,
Before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So then
That's a great story.
Yeah,
Man.
I
That's
love
great.
That. I love that.
yep.
And it's so crazy, like how much we can put ourselves through, and still not be able to be like, I have a problem with drugs now.
Yeah.
I still didn't.
Right.
And it's
They had a problem.
It's interesting too, like how, like you could drop me in like Alaska and I will find like
Oh, yeah.
what I need to find
Oh,
within
for
5 minutes.
sure.
But even like when you're out there, like you just happen to stumble across a meeting
It's-
and like happen to
yeah.
stumble inside the, like some part of you
Mm-hmm.
knows, like it's so crazy how that works.
Yeah, and then I did that, and then like I would go to those things, and then obviously I got introduced to you and Justin back then, and I was like really like, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Impressed.
Impressed,
Shut up.
impressed / internally embarrassed. Seriously, was like I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Impressed, and then also a little bit intimidated because like I remember you had a car and like you were like picking me up with Justin, and I remember we were off Carl Road. We went to a meeting and you guys were like doing the meeting circuit. You guys were like circuit meeting makers.
Oh yeah.
And you guys were like having fun, and you guys like had real friends, and you guys went to do shit. And I didn't have any of that. Like my friends were like the old lady I bought pills off of. When I had to like con her into like throwing me another one. And it was like I didn't have any like social type of connection at all, and I was really like embarrassed internally, like, damn dude, like you literally don't have any fucking friends. Like and then like you guys are like, pretty essentially like, hey, come be my friend, and I'm like, you guys are better than me. You know, and internally I'm thinking I'm putting myself on a lower pedestal because I'm not seeing the house being built. I just see the built house, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
From my perspective,
Right.
that was like what life was. Like, damn, this dude's got a car.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's got money to go buy pizza, and like he's doing all right. Like, you know, that was my version of success starting off. Like, he's got friends. He's fucking. You know,
Low bar.
yeah, it was super. Well, the bar is set so low for drug. You get your fucking library card, and somebody on Facebook like, "Good job, man, way to do it." And
This motherfucker trying to flex
man.
on me with a library
yeah,
card.
yeah, no doubt. But then I seen all that stuff, man, and then I remember sitting at a meeting in Carl Road, and you probably don't remember this, but I do though. It was this Ludacris song called "Blow It Out Your Ass," right? And like you were banging it in your car, and I'm in the back seat, and I'm like, I wasn't even high, bro, but I just remember having such a good fucking time sitting at this off Carl Road at some random church up there by the YMCA,
Yeah.
and just listening to that, and then I would, you know, I was like, man, like so that was actually like the first like stint I had at like actually like making an attempt, but I was nowhere ready to get clean. But you know, the day you plant the seed ain't the day you eat the fruit, right? So it's like the seed got planted then, little did I know, and then you know it took some more research for me to figure out like what I have to do to also have some things in life. I get out of prison. This is where it gets real sad. This is like fucking I meet the person I used to buy pills off of. They're like, hey, I remember having my gate pay. My cousin Dominic gave me some slippers, but he's like, bro, I didn't have anything when I got out. I got released, and I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't even know where I'm going to stay. And he gave me these Jordan flip-flops, and he's like, but one of them smaller than the other. I'm like, fuck you mean one of them smaller than the other? He's like, I dried it off front of the heater, and it shrunk. One of them shrunk. And so I'm walking around with these flip-flops. One of them shrunk, and like that's all I had. And like all my clothes I had were at somebody's house, and then they, you know how that goes. I don't even know who the hell these people were. I don't even know their real names, right?
Right.
So that was gone, and I remember I had like $100, and the lady I used to buy pills off of, she's now like selling heroin, and she's like, you need to start doing this, like selling heroin or whatever. And I just get this great idea, like I'm gonna be a heroin dealer now, right? I do that, boom, the shit's moving fast. Everybody I knew that used to do pills, now they're doing heroin, right? Because I was gone for that long. So like when I got out, there was
Yeah, It's a 3-month time jump. Like
no, it was a 3-year.
Or, I'm sorry, 3
year,
years. 3 years.
yeah.
That's what I meant. That's what I
And
meant,
it's
yeah.
like that
Yeah.
whole phase was gone,
Right.
right? Like we're not in NCAA no more. Like, we're fucking in the league now, right? And then I just remember selling. I'm not getting high. I don't know how the hell it had happened, but I mean I wasn't getting high. Wasn't using. I did that for like 3 months till I couldn't, and then I remember I had like $10,000. I had a real big ego. All of a sudden, I was like this fucking big time drug dealer in my mind, right? Like we're just gonna erase the fucking 5 years of dereliction I lived before then.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing it. Like fuck what them people talking about. Like you can't be around drugs or alcohol and not use. Like I'm doing it, right?
And you're not drinking or smoking weed or
Nope.
anything at this point?
Nope.
Just
And
stone
then-
cold sober?
And then I start drinking. And then after I drink, then I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's do this. Let's do that. Next thing you know, I start calling the people to like re-up, and they're not answering. And I'm like, the fuck do I do? So I call somebody else, and then they're not answering. So I'm like, I'll just wait. I got enough money. I met this girl. She's like, you do a lot of cocaine. I'm like, well, yeah. She's like, you ever smoke crack? I'm like, God, no. Like, are you like I'm having her
Right.
inject me with heroin. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you fucking like, you're just a disgusting person. And then like I'm telling her about herself and like how just a disgusting a drug it is. And then I'm like shooting heroin now, and she's like hitting me because I didn't know how to do that. And
And did you jump right to...
no, that was a progression. It was snorting it. Now I'm snorting so much I can't even feel it while I'm snorting it no more. So then I'm shooting it. But I had the supply to maintain a very high habit. So I didn't have a problem. Because I'm never waking up sick.
Right.
I don't have a problem because I'm never running out. So I don't know the severity of what this problem I have is. Then people stopped answering. That girl I was lecturing and sponsoring about smoking crack. Yeah, we like worked. You know, we did the whole thing. Right, I had a counseling session with her over. She's like, just try it. I'm like, fuck it, I'll try it. And then within 3 weeks, dude, like I had down to like $1,500. I didn't have any dope no more. People aren't calling me. So I call this guy. He takes me, I pick him up off Weber Road. We go out west off Neshoba, however you say it. I'm like, hey, I'm not giving you the money to run in here, dude. He's like, I ain't taking the money. Like, I'll get them to let me bring it out. Back in them days, it was black tar heroin. I'm getting real graphic here, I know. But, so if I was at another place sharing like this, they'd be like, get off the stage, dude. Like,
No, we're here for it. We're here for it.
Yeah. And
Because I think that's like a unique thing, like regionally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the east on the east and west coast, like you have white powder stuff.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then here it is just straight. You're getting black tar from Mexico, and that's it.
Yeah, and back in those days, that was like 2014. That was like what was around, you know. So this guy comes out. It's late at night. He's got a Kroger bag. We weigh it. I'm like, let me see it. He's like, no, like I'm not gonna give it to you till you give me the money. So he rips in there. He rips a piece off. I got the dude in the back with me, and I give him. I break it in half. He does it, and he's like, man, this is good. And I'm like, okay. So I give him the money, and then I tuck it underneath my my sack there, and driving down the road, that same dude's like, hey, I don't want my girl to know I got $20, but can you sell me some? And I'm like, yeah, I got you. And I go to reach in that bag, and that dude had put a piece of real dope on top, and then the other was a brownie with like fucking brown sugar on it or something. I go back to find the dude, and he's not there. It's an abandoned like apartment. The lady next door told me. I'm just thinking, what am I gonna do, bro? Like, I'm bankrupt now, right? And so now I'm running out of Home Depots, Lowe's, just fucking you name it. Like,
Did you eat the brownie?
No, I didn't. I should have. Looking back on it, I probably needed to eat it more than I needed to do some heroin. But I mean, I was devastated, man. And I start running out of Lowe's the next morning, Home Depot, Kroger, whatever the fuck I could do to get some money. And I'm literally 3 months later, I'm holding a sign in the same neighborhood I grew up with, off Weber Road and Silver Drive, and it was cold as fuck. It was November 2014. And, you know, I probably would have got more money if I wrote, I need heroin, held it on the sign. Somebody probably would have thrown me more money than my bullshit fucking veteran sign I held up or whatever.
Yeah.
Homeless, we'll work for food or whatever. I remember the Columbus City Police pulled up, and I'm at this point, I'm just like, I don't even care. Take me to jail. I'm fucking freezing out here. I ain't got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get $9, even though the dude told me, don't come back without 20. I know if I got 9, I can work my hand a little bit.
Almost 50% of the way there.
Yeah, cool, bro.
That's close enough. That's
Yeah, I
basically
just gotta get
$20.
well, and then I'll
Right.
bring you the rest. And they rolled the window down, and they're like, they tossed a fucking cheeseburger at me. It's a true story. And they're like, you need to eat it. And they drove off. And I'm like, well, thanks for your service, man. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
Tax dollars at work.
yeah. the cop did that, dude, at Silver Drive right there on Weber Road. But I stood there, man, and I ate it. And I didn't eat the cheeseburger, but I ate seeing people I know fucking driving by me, dude. You know, probably laughing at me, or in my mind they're laughing at me. They're probably thinking like, that dude needs help bad, bro.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Look at him. He looks fucking terrible. And I scurry on down Weber Road. I go get my dope, and then I do it, and I'm fine. It's like Gollum at that point. Like when I don't got the ring, I'm freaking out. But when I got the ring, it's like everything's okay.
Yeah.
And that part of it, and the sickness obviously, kept me just so wrapped up in that for so long. It's like no matter what type of shambles my life is in, as long as that dope hits the palm of my hand, everything is okay for that brief moment in time. And it's been like that since I was a kid. No matter what the dope was. It don't even matter what the fucking dope was or the alcohol or whatever. As long as it's in my hand, everything's okay.
It's
right?
fine.
It's fine. And, you know, living your life like that, though, like there's consequences to it. And then my sister reached out to me, and she's like, hey, I know about this rehab.
Where are you living at this point?
I'm sleeping really wherever I can, but one of my sisters lived in Sunbury. So, like, 30 minutes. It might have been across the country.
Yeah.
When you ain't got a car, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But I'm staying there sometimes, but I don't know anywhere to get dope up there, so I'm not staying there because, you know, I remember turning down, like, people would, like, offer me to go, like, vacations, and not at this point in my life, but I remember turning that down because it's like, if I wake up and I don't know somebody to call to get pills or heroin or even weed, even, it's like, I'm not placing
Right.
myself in that position.
Yeah.
I call this rehab. I go to the rehab. At first, when they told me, they're like, it's going to be 60 days. But, you know, they were the only place that I knew of, them in Maryhaven, that would take me without an active insurance. In Maryhaven, you had to call by 8 a.m. And, I mean, I don't know what I don't know where you go when you die or what happens to you. But think whatever that is, if there's even anything at all, that these places do exist, because, like, I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for these places, because obviously, like, they accepted me when nobody would let me in. The dude telling me dope wouldn't let me in. Like, that's how bad it got. He's like, no, bro, I'm going to meet you outside. But unfortunately, I could never really get into Maryhaven, right down out east here in Columbus. So I ended up going to Southern Ohio in Portsmouth, and I make it down there, and I'm like strung out, and I don't know. I remember hearing this guy saying, if it's odd, it's God. If it's odd, it's God. He just kept saying that, right? And I'm like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, God, like, I'm sick. I'm withdrawing. And I'm like, hey, when am I going to see the doctor? Like, that was my whole plan. Like, I just wanted to get on some boxing and then go do things my way when I got out, right? And they're like, you'll see the doctor tomorrow. So, obviously, I told him I didn't get high when I came in. That was a lie. When I was there, I got high the day I got there. The next day I woke up. I was sick, and that's why I was like, I need to see the doctor, scrambling. So then they're like, yeah, doctor will see you tomorrow. So now I'm on day 2. I wake up. I barely even slept. I tossed and turned. I was up every 15 minutes. But wake up, and we're going to go to the group for the rehab, and I'm going to go see the doctor. And a snowstorm happens where it's like fucking 2 feet of snow. And they're like, the doctor ain't coming in today.
Oh shit.
That was on a Friday, and they're like, Martin Luther King Day's on Monday, so he's not gonna be in until Tuesday. So I sat there and I sweated it out the entire time, right? Which don't sound that bad, but that's in a life sentence when you're withdrawing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
and
For sure.
I get there Tuesday and I go to see the doctor, and he tells me no. I'm like, what do you mean no? He's like, I'm not writing you a prescription. You've literally been abstinent for almost a week.
Yeah.
Like,
You're cool.
You're cool. And I was so mad, but man, it helped me so much, right? So I learned all these good things when I'm in the treatment program, and, you know, I start making some friends, and I start reflecting on some stuff. And, you know, wasn't enough to keep me clean. I ultimately made a decision. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And they're like, hey, you should stay away from relationships. You should stay, you know, all the cookie cutter stuff they tell you when you're first getting sober, like, stay away from relationships, take it easy, like, don't make any decisions that run them through your sponsor. And met this girl in there, you know, she was in the women's treatment program and I was in the men's. And then I remember we were at a meeting, and I'm going to the coffee pot for no fucking reason, like, just looking over at her and shit. And I seen her, like, whispering to my friends, and then I get back to the rehab on the phone I wasn't supposed to have, and I check it, and I'm like, I got a friend request on Facebook from this girl. I'm telling my dude's like, bro, like, blah, 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 blah. He's like hyping me up, and she's like 2 weeks later, you know, we're going to set boundaries. I'm like, yeah, we gotta have our boundaries. I don't even know what the fuck we're talking about.
Right.
I gotta have my boundaries.
Those.
And we go to
Whatever the fuck those are.
yeah,
Right.
whatever those are.
Yeah.
Dude. And I end up, she's like, I'm leaving. You can stay here or you can leave with me. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm out of here, right? Like, so everybody's begging me not to do that. They're like, dude, you're almost done. Like, you've been here 90 days. Why are you doing that? Like, you're gonna go to the sober living after this. But the problem was, her mother didn't know that the 24-year-old drug addict was with his trash, like, B-rabbing on 8 Mile. I got my trash bag. Like, what's up, Mom? And she's like, who the fuck is this? Like, he ain't staying here. And
Right.
so then I'm, like, allowed to stay there, like, 2 nights a week. And then she's like, let me drive her car. It breaks down. And then and we both ended up getting high. And then, you know, obviously I was catching some charges, ended up getting locked back up. But then, man, when I'm locked up this time, I just don't care. Like, I'm always getting into it with people in there. I'm getting high. I'm doing like meth, and then people are like writing me letters. The only letters I'm getting are from people in recovery. Like they're the only fucking people that are even like, if I died at that moment in time, 5 years would go by, nobody would fucking remember I was alive. Like I'd be like, damn, whatever happened to that dude? Oh, he's been dead for 3 years. No shit. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it's crazy. And I'd have been one of those guys, man. And a couple of my friends in there, they get into it with the dude. The dude is like fucking been down since the 90s, and he's only fucking 36, 37 years old. This is in 2016. So, I mean, you do the math. The dude's been incarcerated like his whole life. So we go.
And your boys are fucking with him?
My boys fronted him some dope, some boxing, weeds, whatever in there. He was going to pay him back. He chalked him when he was going to pay him back. So we go in there, and I'm like doing the talking. I'm like, hey, look, like you're going to pay. And he's like, I got you. And he goes in this bag, and we're thinking he's giving us like whatever. And he just fucking slices my dude in the face. I start punching him. My dude starts punching him. He's fucking eating these bitches, bro. Like, this dude's like fucking like Jason Bourne, bro. It's like, fuck, this dude ain't dropping, bro.
Right.
He's punching,
This
he's
ain't
swinging
his
his
first
knife.
rodeo.
No,
He's been
fuck,
down
right,
that
bro.
long.
And anyways, the dude ends up falling. He hits his fucking head, and I just remember this dude, like, he didn't help us at all in the fucking whole altercation, but he popped the door and was like, it's in the light. And then he took off running. And I'm in Madison Correctional on the level 3 side, and I get in the light because it sells, and I take it down, and I got it on me or whatever. And the next thing you know, there's like 10 COs coming there. We're all locked down, and I start shoving shit, cuffing it, and they take us to the hole, and then like 2 days later, man, the State Highway Patrol comes. And if you ever been in prison and the State Highway Patrol does anything, and let me just stop for the record. This ain't no like badass story where I went in there and just strong-armed the fucking dude. I mean, ultimately it took 3 people to drop the motherfucker. So it's like, this ain't no like, I'm not living on a like highlight here. But the way he fell, he had hit his head, and they're like, yeah, he's State Highway Patrol's like, hey, this is whatever officer, blah 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 blah. You're on the record. Inmate, they said the guy's name, and I'm like, and they're like, he had to be transported to outside medical facility, and he's currently in a coma. And I'm like, oh shit, like I want to talk to my lawyer. And they're like, okay. I don't have a lawyer, but you always say that once you know you're fucked. And we go back to the cell, and I'm in the hole by myself, and I'm a devout Christian at that moment. I'm like doing plea bargains with myself, like, I'll take 10, but I can't take this. Like, if this dude dies, like, and this conversation, I'm just alone in this room.
Right.
And then finally the dude comes back. He doesn't die. He doesn't have any, like, he had some injuries, but it wasn't nothing like where he was, like, walking with a limp or nothing long term. And I get this note under my door, and I read the note, and it's from him, and he's like, hey, I'm not pressing charges. I'm not doing none of that. He just has to ask that, like, we send word back to our people that are out there that, like, he didn't tell on us, blah, 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 none of that. And I'm just thankful that the dude didn't fucking, like, mash the gas on some charges or try to get some, like, bailout lawsuit or whatever, looking back on it. But so we go for, like, this classification hearing, and I'm already at a level 3, and then they're like, yo, yeah, you're reclassified. And I'm like, okay, to what? And they're like, you're going to a 4B, 4A. And I'm like, what is that? And then they're like, Lucasville Penitentiary. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, you got to be kidding me, dude.
Which is a max.
What is it?
It's a max security.
Yeah.
Lucasville.
Yeah, Lucasville Penitentiary is a max.
Because they don't play with like violence inside the prison. That's a whole different.
Yeah, especially like that. Like, you get fights and stuff like that, but when there's like, they got like rules, rule 3, rule 4. Like, when it's higher like that, like mine was like a rule 3, and that was like one of the many tickets I had. So they just finally ride you out, and once you're in a level 3, the only way to go from there is a level 4. So I end up going to Lucasville, and when I'm in Lucasville, it's just like a whole different animal. People are throwing shit on people. The COs, they'll just beat the fuck out of you. There's like constantly violence. Like, you can't even go to the shower when you're in 4A without like having like, somebody on the phone watching you while you're in the shower to like have your back. It's like real deal, man. But then, just like with anything, you get accustomed to it, and then you start meeting some people, and then it's super boring, and then something crazy will happen, and then it's super boring, and then something crazy will happen. But I remember the day I was supposed to get released from there. I didn't tell anybody. I only, like, when I got to Lucasville, I only had, like, I don't know, like less than a year left. Because when you do that, they'll fucking crash out on you. Like, you got some dude in there that's never going home, and he's just mentally ill. He'll fucking, you'll be the topic of your next 9 months. Like, you know.
And no one's in there checking paperwork?
I mean, they not for discharge. They'll not like when you're getting out. They'll check your paperwork though, like
what your charges are.
What your charges are, if you told on anybody to get there or anything like that. It's still fucked up, but I got all my paperwork still to this day. It's fucking crazy. It's like I can't part ways with it.
Right.
Like, what is it, a fucking Bible thing?
It's in the LeBron James shoebox that I've had with all my letters
Got
in there for a long
filing
time.
cabinet.
Hell yeah.
So I get out of there though, man, and the day I get out, I end up overdosing. And
Oh, shit.
I overdose, and I remember waking up in the back of the ambulance, and they're like, "Do you know where you're at?" And I'm like, "I'm at Speedway." They're like, "No, you're in the back of an ambulance." Like, we just had I wish I could tell you. I know when I hear people share their stories, they're like, "I had to get Narcan 12 times." I don't know. They didn't fucking tell me. Like, you had to.
Yeah.
They told me you were like clinically dead, dude.
Right.
Like, we didn't know if you was coming back, and I ended up going to treatment again. And when I'm in treatment this time, like, I really mean it. That's what I'm telling myself. And I get a sponsor, and he's like, you know. I don't care what you do. You got to go to some meetings. You got to listen to me, or I'm not gonna waste my fucking time. Like, dude had a lot going on. You know, he was in his master's program for social work. He had a job. He had a family already. He had everything that was enticing to me. Little do I know how hard it is to maintain or how hard it is to get there. But I wanted it though. So I thought, until you get it, and you're like, God, this is fucking kind of tough. And so I'm like working steps with this guy, and you know, we're getting real deep, and I mean, he's being mean to me. He's like busting me down, dude. These are fucking brutal, and I'm like, God, this is kind of tough. And I end up making it through the treatment program. I go to the sober living, and when I'm at the sober living, no one would hire me, and I end up getting a job at McDonald's. And I'm in Portsmouth, Ohio, and I'm walking to this McDonald's. It's like 2 miles from where I was living, 2 miles back. I'm working third shift. And I remember calling him, and it was like the dude bullied me for like 6 months straight, bro. Every time I'd call him, like, it wasn't no soft shit at all. Like, I know, like, that's kind of cliche. Like, but, you know, this dude's like the nicest dude in the world, too. Like, if you meet this dude, my man Max, if you meet him, you'd be like, this guy's so nice, but he was brutal with me, dude. And, I remember calling him like, man, this job fucking sucks. He said, well, if it was a good job, you think they'd hire you? And I remember thinking like, God, this dude's kind of right, but goddamn, that was mean. Man, dude. That was a little harsh. And I just took his suggestions, man. Everything he did, you know, he's like, hey, you got to get a service position. So I did that. I'm not even understanding what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then later do I find out, though, this has nothing to do with what you know and everything to do with what you do, right? Like, I've seen the smartest of people, they just cannot stay clean. And I've seen people that are like, they got like a squirrel brain, and they're going on 15, 20 years, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, how does this not equate? Like,
right.
And the one thing is, it's like everything you do matters, but everything you know, like, you know, that has little to do with any of this, right? We all went through DARE, like, stay away from drugs.
Right.
It's like, that's literally, like, if you just do that and listen to somebody, like, your life gets 10 times better than that. That's where I was at in my life. I was just like, dude, I can't do it my way. So I remember getting my year. And like 6 months, and like that was all like the biggest amount of like sobriety time I had on my own. So like that was like a big accomplishment to me, right? Like, but I was still cool. So when I'd go up and I was at a meeting and somebody would be like, get your key tag or your coin, and I would be like, thank you. And like, but in my mind I'm like, dude, I can't believe this is me, bro.
Yeah.
Like, right. People are clapping for me. How'd you do it? One day at a time. Yeah. I'm just walking away and stuff. And so then I get like 2 years, and then, you know, I remember I got a job in a treatment program, and I thought that was going to be easy. And little do I know, I'm just like, that's like one of the most mentally exhausting jobs that I had. The dream was, this is going to be cake. I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to tell people, don't
dispel
get
my
high.
wisdom and
right,
shape young minds every day.
Yeah, dude, this dude's on fire, but they're like, yeah, I don't give a fuck, dude.
You're right.
Where's my vape? Where's my meds? So I, you know, they're me when I wanted to see the doctor. They're just being a fucking dickhead, most of them. Then I stayed there, and I was like a third shift guy there, and then, you know, I ended up getting like the second shift job, like the the resident monitor, we were called, and then there was some places call them techs, whatever. But I mean, I like worked with the clients and in housing and stuff. And then I remember that same guy that sponsored me for all those years. He's like, "You got to get into school, dude." And I'm like, "Bro, I got my GED. Like, what do you want me to get into school for?" And he's like, "Just enroll, take your basic classes, because an education makes you valuable, right?" And I remember him telling me that, and I'm like, fucking, all right, I guess. So I get into school, and I'm just making a commitment to do it every day, or when the assignments were due. So then I got all that out of the way, and then I'm staying sober through this whole period. And then, excuse me, next thing you know, I ended up graduating with a degree in social work. And then they're like, you got to take a test, and this test is like 120 pages, or questions are long. I go in there, they're like, can't have your phone, can't have your wallet. And it kind of reminds me of a place I used to be, but I go in there and take a test, and I end up passing it. And then I just kept grinding, man. And then it was like at this time I was a counselor, and then I'd reach out to some people here in Columbus that I'd known forever. And they're like, yeah, dude, like, a couple years ago, we just started our own, and I'm like, man, that's badass. And, I'm thinking these guys are like super rich guys and all this kind of stuff, but they're like, nah, bro, like, we emptied the bank to do this. Like, everything we had saved.
Start their own treatment center.
Right.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
bro, if this doesn't work out, we're kind of fucked. Bro.
Yeah.
Like, and thank God it's working, but I end up going with them or whatever, and then I'm just showing up every day, and then like what I've learned through school, and then all this, and then the position came up where they're like, hey, like, we need an executive director. It's like similar to like CEO role, and I'm like, hold on, for the record, I'm not applying for this job. And they're like, no, like, you're our guy, bro. Like, you're gonna take it, you're gonna do good at it, and like that's what I do now, man. I'm an executive director at Forward Health Treatment here, and we got branches all over. We got inpatient, we got IOP, working on a detox. We got over 150 clients. Our staff we got about 70 staff members, and sometimes it don't even feel real. I've became pretty successful for a guy that was like sharing needles with people I didn't even know who these people are, right?
Right.
Like I've surpassed every goal I've ever had, man. And sometimes after sharing like everything that this big roundabout I took you guys through today, dude, it's kind of shocking. Like, the only thing I have done right and since 2017 is I just have not used drugs. I have not used alcohol. I've not drank. That's the only thing I've done right. I've made so many mistakes, financial mistakes. I got in the whole getting clean, getting a bunch of credit cards that I'm still fucking paying for today, right? Like, I did all that. I got trapped and enticed, like, oh, I want a new car. And then they're like, there's 29% APR. And I'm like, fuck it, give it to me. And, I learned from those.
Yeah,
sure. But, man, like, the thing I never made a mistake on, though, was using. And I don't got to be a smart man to know, like, my life is 10 times better today than it was then. And the only equivalation is I have not used any substances. I have a girl. We've been engaged. It's going to sound bad for fucking years now. I don't want the government all involved in my marriage. Right? It's kind of weird. Why I got to get the government involved in my relationship?
Tax breaks, man.
Yeah,
Tax
no doubt.
breaks.
Absolutely. We have 2 kids. One of my biggest fears, I remember when I was working on steps, was that something would be wrong with one of my children. Wrong. My son was born, and he was progressing really well, and then I'm not on like a Joe Rogan. I don't know Joe Rogan, but I know Matt, right? So anyways, I'm like, he gets like his shots or whatever, and then he starts like he's breaking eye contact, not holding eye contact as much, he's not progressing, and in my mind, I'm like, something's going on. Like, he's not hitting milestones right. He's not like he's not saying words, not like really engaging in things. He's doing a lot of repetitive stuff. But just like with my substance abuse and my addiction, I was like in denial for a long time. And then I remember my mother-in-law, nice woman in the world, love her to death. She actually works for me now. Like, she's like one of the best employees like we got. And she told me, like, hey, you might want to get him evaluated for autism. And I got so pissed at her, dude. I'm like, hey, you don't talk about other people's kids like that. But eventually we got him diagnosed. He was diagnosed with severe autism. And he's 5 now. And, you know, my life just consisted of, like, going to therapies with him. His mother's amazing. She's a way better person than I'll ever be. And I'll say that on the record. Probably wouldn't say that to her, but I'll say it now that she's not here.
We'll send her a link once this goes up.
Her whole life is contingent upon him and my daughter. My daughter's non-autistic, but my son is. Sometimes I feel bad for my daughter to get emotional with you guys. Like, she's like a glass child, I guess, because sometimes you see through her because his needs are pretty high.
Right.
And it was like he doesn't sleep. But now he's on some medication that helps him regulate that. But when he was younger, he did not sleep. He was too young to medicate. So there'd be days where I like to say me, but not as bad as his mom would just be up with him. Because you can't leave the autistic 2.5-year-old running around the house.
Right.
Like, you won't have a house. Like, you'll
Right.
destroy this fucking thing. So we go to therapies. You know, I've learned a lot. I've actually went to the Ohio State University and spoke to the grad students. It was probably the coolest thing I've done since I've been clean about autism and how that's affected my life. I don't know how in the hell they found me, but they reached out to me. I went to the campus and I spoke to a large audience of people, highly educated people that are going to be doctors. And I'm thinking, obviously I didn't share with them what I shared with you guys today, but I'm like, if they only fucking knew they got up here talking to these people. Right.
So here's a fucking story for you.
Yeah. And then everybody's like, well, you're a social worker. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not a real social worker. Like, I am, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, I took the test. I got my LSW, but like, when I think of social worker, I think of like some real kind, caring, like gentle, like somebody that's like equipped to deal with a child with autism.
No. This is the best kind of social work. My uncle Mike we interviewed was a social worker.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
a real social worker. Somebody
Yeah.
that's like lived it and can been through some shit.
I think you're the most equipped to handle
But
that type of
sometimes
shit.
But sometimes I forget that though. They're like, you're a social worker. I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
but
fuck.
I'm not like a real one though, dude. Like, I'm thinking a real one, like she like knows techniques and like how to.
All I did was study for years and pass the test.
Yeah,
but I'm
right.
a real social worker.
Yeah.
no
no
doubt.
shit.
So, you know, but that obviously has helped me though with like dealing with my son. And then now it's like he goes to school. He doesn't talk though. I've never got to hear my son's voice. We've never had to have a conversation. I'm hoping that day comes. It's something that I'm like really wanting to happen, obviously. And you know, there's some struggles that I don't know how to navigate that I'm just still working out. Like, will he ever be out of a diaper? You know, he's 5 and he's still in a diaper, and you know, and then I start reflecting on that about myself. Like, there's something I'm not doing right because although he has a disability, I should at this point have taught him how to use the bathroom. And then there's some like I don't know what we would call it, but it's not really envy. I guess this feeling could be more related with like a remorse kind of thing. But, you know, I see friends and I got, you know, colleagues and people I meet every day to day, and then their sons are like playing t-ball or soccer, and it's like, damn, like my son's still in a diaper, right? But then I got to remember, man, like he's freer than I'll ever fucking be. Like, you give this kid a tablet, you give him Gushers, box, he'll eat the fucking whole box, and Lindor chocolates. He's content.
Yeah.
He don't need any of this outside shit. He don't give a fuck what kind of car you got. He don't
Right.
care how much you made this year. Like, he's
Yeah.
like, I'm in my zone, dude. This is what I want to do. Right? He's free. Like, if he doesn't want to do something, he doesn't pretend like he wants to do it. He just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
If you try to get him to, he's pretty much like, fuck off. Like, I'm not doing this. And it's like a certain liberation that comes with that, where it's like, bro, like the freedom to just be who you are all the time is just something that's just so crazy to me. And it's like, when I start comparing and contrasting, it's like it kind of steals my joy. So I loop it back to that. Like, you know, he's a way happier person than I ever am. And, you know, that's pretty impressive, though. And then, you know, just navigating things as a young father, man. And then also my significant other, she's in recovery as well. And, you know, like in the beginning, we thought that would be like an issue. But so far, we're batting 1,000. She's been sober longer than me, which I'm not always happy about sometimes, but here it is.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I can only imagine the kind of stuff you get to hear about that on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got asked this question the other day, like, does it cross your mind to drink? And I was like, no. And then I was like, should it? Like, it just doesn't. Like, the obsession to use has, like, I guess been lifted from me. But, like, I don't have a stressful day and I don't think, oh, let me go drink.
Alcohol.
Like, I have a stressful day and I'm like, let me go fucking dick off $100 on FanDuel on bets I know ain't gonna hit, right? Or, let me stop and like, all this vape is gonna fix it for me. It's gonna make me happy for a couple minutes, and I do shit like that. Or I gotta go buy this. I gotta go, fucking and do that kind of stuff. So I guess the disease has like shifted into other areas of my life, but yeah, man, like I just. And once upon a time, it wasn't like that. That was all that was on my mind. Even early on in sobriety, it was like, I got to figure out a way somehow where I can successfully use drugs. I would still love it if Bezos or like one of them, Elon Musk developed like a pill where it's like, you could take this and you can use successfully one time a month. This is 100% successful. But until that happens, which I highly doubt it ever will, like, this is the best fucking thing that I got going for me.
We're gonna have functioning like sex robots in a colony on Mars long before anything like that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. But till that day comes, if it comes, and if that does happen, I want to see you do it first, and let me see if it works, and then and then go from there. But no, all jokes aside, man, like the grind it took to get here. Day by day, it don't really seem like that much, but it's like, it's been a lot of work, and anybody in long-term recovery can like attest to that. Like, it's like, it gets easier, but the main thing is, though, it's like, you just, like Nike, you got to do it, dude. It's like, you just got to get up and you just got to make sure, like, whatever I do today, and early on that thought's very intrusive, like, use drugs, use drink, do something, no, I'm not doing that. But then, you meet some friends, and then I'm real big on that connection part too, though, man. It's like, it's really good, and I think that's one of the main things that's kept me sober. I don't got a million friends, but I got my group, man, and your group chat's gonna keep you sober, bro. Like, that group chat that's gonna be your lifeline.
I dig
bro.
that. Yeah.
It's gonna roast the fuck out of you, but can also keep you sober.
Yeah. Like, dude, what are you doing? They're such a douchebag, bro.
Right.
But then it's like, you guys want to go to beat up after this?
Right.
Hey, mental defectives.
Would you like to advertise on our podcast?
If so, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com.
So we can help you make a lot of money.
A whole lot of money. I wanted to touch real briefly on lifting.
Sure, go ahead, man.
That's a big thing. When did you start lifting?
My sponsor.
Because you're doing us dirty. You came in a pump cover.
I am.
And the people want to see how slow you are. Jerry been talking about it all day.
Right.
Okay. I got you. So I started lifting. Like, I'd always been in like physical exercise and stuff. But then my first sponsor, he's like real big on like, the dude's done shit with like Noble. He's like tried to bridge they got a documentary about him. Not just solely about him, but like his efforts to combine like CrossFit and other lifting with substance abuse recovery. I mean, he's spoken at state conventions about it, and like he's just got his hands in a little bit of everything with that. He went to Rogue right there on 5th and did this big conference there and talked about how people that engage in like some sort of like physical exercise like CrossFit that are in recovery, like he's a pretty smart guy, man, and he busted out some statistics on it and like some real life experiences. But he convinced me at this time, he was like, powerlifting. He's like, you need to be powerlifting. So like I was really shitty at that like the whole time I did it. And like comparatively, like it's like, yeah, you're strong, but then you get on Instagram and you see like some 16-year-old kid in like Asia, and he's like fucking deadlifting 700 pounds and he weighs 150.
Who's also running enough tests to kill an elephant.
Yeah.
Which is like something you also got to, I fall victim to that too. Be like at the gym and you look over and there's a 20-year-old putting up 4 times the amount.
Yeah, and you're like, holy fuck. But yeah, so I got into that, and then like I really liked it, man. And although I never won like state records or anything at it, I competed in powerlifting for a long time. Then I started getting beat up just from the continuous grind of like lifting heavy shit. Starts to beat up your joints and stuff, I guess. I'm like, well, let me just stop doing that. Now I just do some more functional fitness kind of stuff, like bodybuilding kind of workout. I got a friend, he's a bodybuilder, and he's like, hey, you should hop in a show. I don't know if I can give up, like, consistently stick to a diet, but, man, I honestly believe, though, like, if I'm going to just put it like this. Every person that I've met in recovery, you know, that would be like in the circle. And then you got some people that go to the gym, and then you got some people that are like, I ain't worth all that working out shit. Once them people stop saying that and they actually try it and they consistently do it, they're like, dude, like I'm hooked. Like this feels good, bro. And it's like, you know, to me, man, it's just as helpful. I mean, I wouldn't say this certain places, but at this point in my life, I get just as much like focus and like release of stress and tension, and it just keeps me, as my friend Jake Bradshaw would say, it keeps me locked in, right? He said being friends with the dude in 2024 that can hit you with their problems, and all you got to say is, bro, it sounds like you need to lock in. That's it, right? It's like, well, bro, you're right, bro. But that's what they tell me all the time, bro. You just got to lock in. So, yeah, but it helps me lock in, man. It just helps me really get through my day-to-day. And, you know, sometimes I dread doing it, but then when I'm there, you know, I guess you got to embrace the suck a little bit. Like, I've always felt better after I've done it, something challenging. And
Yeah. I like, dude, I was sidelined with like this weird fucking nerve thing for the past year. I could not lift. I've just been able to get back in there in the past like 2 months, and like I cannot believe how much I fucking missed it.
Yeah.
And like even like you said,
I've been seeing
like,
you on your stories.
I've been getting back in there.
Yeah.
But like, which has been fucking brutal.
Yeah.
Like, do not suggest taking that long off, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
your form's a little.
fuck off. It's real humbling though to
Yeah.
like max out on what my warm-ups used to be, just taking that much time off, but I'm getting back to it. But yeah, it's just something about being able to go in there and just like get my like AirPods one level below, blowing my eardrums out, and like enough caffeine to like kill a small child or a horse, and just like going crazy in there. I always feel better. What advice would you have for someone, like a new parent with a child with a disability?
So the best advice I would have, to be honest with you, is, and it's the same kind of story with recovery, right? Like, first you got to acknowledge, I don't know if you want to call it a problem or whatever you want to label it, but there's something there, right? Like, you got to internally accept that. And then also, it's like there's so many resources. One thing I wish Franklin County itself had more of is actually resources for like autism or other disabilities. Because I mean, you call a lot of these places, dude, they're just so packed and so scheduled out for months. But you just got to keep grinding. You got to work your hand with it, man. Like, hey, like what programs are out there? So like what I know now is that like when my son doesn't go to occupational therapies, when I'm not reaching out to his team, he has a whole team of people. That doesn't translate well to how he succeeds at home or at school, right? But my best advice would be to you got to reach out, and you know, you can't protect that out of like whether it's embarrassment or whether it's like an ego thing or whether it's something that every parent would go through. Like, I don't want anything to be wrong with my child. I don't know anybody that's like, yeah, I can't wait for something to be wrong with my child, right? Like, hopefully, nobody's saying that, but
Right.
well, I don't know anybody, at least, but yeah. So it's like you got to just really internalize, like, hey, like me doing this is not helping the situation. I have to reach out and I have to make an effort too. And you got to be their voice, and you might have to be their voice for a long time. Like, my biggest fear now isn't that I'm gonna wake up and not be able to get dope. It's, what if I die and somebody's not here? Like, what happens to my son? Like, that's probably gonna have somebody with him who's gonna take care of him?
Sure.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
like it's fun when he's a cute kid, but like,
Right.
what about when he's 30?
Yeah.
Like, it ain't, you know, it's not fun no more. And it's like, if I'm not here for him, or I'm not sober, or I'm incarcerated, or I'm dead, like what happens to him? And that's like really my biggest fear. But and his mother's fear too, times 10. She's just a hypochondriac with it. She's helicopter mom, big time. But yeah, man, reach out. Like, and I know that sounds so cliche, but it's like, get on Google. Like, we got so much technology, and like everywhere's running an ad for something. Like, and especially places like that, like these nonprofit places, Children's Hospital. Hopefully we can get a sponsorship with Children's after this, but it'd be nice. But yeah, man, you just got to make the calls and be their voice. That'd be my best suggestion, because there's so many different like diagnoses that are out there and everything like that, but there's so many resources and opportunities for people to get some help. So yeah, man, that'd probably be it. Though.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
How about some advice for somebody trying to get sober or just freshly sober?
So some advice that, like I touched on earlier, this shit has everything to do with what you do and nothing to do with what you know. Very little. Just stay away from alcohol or drugs, whatever word you want to use. You got to find some friends because you can't do it alone. I'm not saying you got to go to every meeting and say, hey, I need everybody to be my friend. But you got to have a few people in your corner, man. It just makes it so much easier. And also, you got to get out of that embarrassment stage. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody came in here on a winning streak.
Right.
I highly doubted anybody went to anybody's home group and asked, did anybody come in here on a winning streak? And they're like, I wouldn't be here, dude. And, there's nothing, I don't know if you've turned on the news lately, but the drug use in America is pretty alarming. So this isn't like you're be ostracized for finding out people know you did drugs or had a problem with alcohol or whatever you want to call it. Like, pretty acceptable, but like what's not acceptable is just like being a recluse and then continuously going in and out and doing that cycle. But my best advice would be you got to make some friends. You got to, dude. Mm-hmm. And, I remember getting people's number at a meeting and feeling literally like I was walking up to people saying, will you be my friend?
Yeah.
Like, when I started, like, sponsoring, mentoring, whatever word you want to use for people, I would tell them, like, essentially, dude, you're just going to go up to some random guys and you're going to say, hey, will you be my friend? And then they'll laugh and they'll be like, dude, yeah.
Come on. Right, let's go.
And that breaks the ice. It gets the awkwardness right out the way.
It does.
Just do some things. Get somebody, and, obviously got to be around some clean people, sober people, and find them. And then after you find them, sometimes you can just ask them, what do I have to do? And if they're involved in any sort of program of recovery, they're going to let you know, like, this is what you should do. I'm not going to make you do this. But,
right.
That'd be my best advice. You got to get some friends, man.
Love that.
All right, David. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Last thing. Before we get out of here, before we turn the cameras on, you were telling me the Rams were the worst franchise in the NFL, and you think they'll never win a Super Bowl and they're trash? What do you mean by that?
No.
It's the Mental Defectives podcast. It's Milligram, Jerry with a G. David, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Thank you guys, man. That was good.
Thank you, man. That was great.